From ancient civilizations to the battles that shaped the modern world, this is Echoes of the Past. Every Tuesday and Friday, we bring you the stories history never stops telling. At the Palace of Versailles, the King of France lived in a world of almost unimaginable luxury. Gold on every surface, feasts every night, 20,000 servants. A few miles away in Paris, his subjects were starving. The gap between those two worlds had never been wider, and it was about to close, violently. France ran on a system called the estates. The first estate, the church; the second, the nobility. Neither paid meaningful taxes. The third estate, 97% of France, paid for everything. And in 1788, the harvests failed. Bread prices tripled. The treasury was empty after decades of expensive wars. Louis XVI had no plan, and no time left to find one. When the Estates General met in May 1789, it collapsed almost immediately. The voting system meant the Third Estate could always be outvoted, so they walked out. When they arrived at their meeting hall the next morning and found the doors locked against them, they walked to a nearby tennis court. And there, they swore an oath. They would not leave. They would not go home. They would not stop until France had a constitution. It was the first act of open defiance. The revolution had a heartbeat. Rumors tore through Paris that the king was sending troops to crush the new assembly. The city didn't wait to find out. On the morning of July 14, 1789, a crowd of thousands marched on the Bastille, a royal fortress and prison that stood as the most hated symbol of royal power in France. The garrison fired on the crowd. 98 people were killed. Then the gates broke. The governor was dragged out and killed. His head was carried through the streets on a pike. When Louis XVI was told what had happened, he reportedly asked, "Is it a revolt?" His advisor replied, "No, sire, it is a revolution." He was right, and there was no going back. The revolution spread across France like wildfire. Peasants attacked noble estates and burned the records of their debts. The National Assembly proclaimed the Declaration of the Rights of Man: liberty, equality, fraternity, words that would echo for centuries. Then in October, thousands of Parisian women marched to Versailles, demanding bread. They brought the king back to Paris with them. He would never return to his palace. In June 1791, Louis XVI made the decision that sealed his fate. He disguised himself as a servant and fled Paris in the night, heading for the eastern border and the protection of foreign armies. He was recognized at a small town called Varennes by his own face on a coin. He was brought back to Paris in silence. The people lining the streets didn't cheer, didn't jeer. They just watched, cold, contemptuous. The king had tried to run. He had chosen foreign enemies over his own people. He would not be forgiven. France declared war on Austria and Prussia. Early defeats sent panic through Paris. Rumors of traitors and counter-revolutionaries spread like a disease. In September 1792, mobs stormed the Paris prisons and massacred over 1,000 prisoners in 3 days. Many were ordinary criminals, not political enemies. The revolution was eating people it had never meant to touch, and the most radical voices were getting louder. Louis XVI was put on trial for treason against the French people. The vote was close, but the verdict was death. On his final night, he wrote letters to his family and prayed. He was 38 years old. On the morning of January 21, 1793, he was driven through the silent streets of Paris to the guillotine. He tried to speak to the crowd. Drummers drowned him out. The blade fell. Every monarchy in Europe went into shock. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Courts abroad in uproar. Letters sealed in haste. Maps of Europe tremble under slamming fists. The man who now dominated France was Maximilien Robespierre, a lawyer, a true believer, utterly convinced that anyone who questioned the revolution was an enemy who deserved to die. Under his Committee of Public Safety, the guillotine worked every single day. Denunciations flooded in. Neighbor accused neighbor. Former allies turned on each other. Marie Antoinette was executed, then the moderate leaders, then anyone who questioned the pace of the killing. 17,000 people were officially executed. Up to 40,000 died in total. The revolution had become something none of its founders had imagined. In July 1794, the delegates of the National Convention decided they had had enough. They shouted Robespierre down on the floor. He was arrested. The man who had sent thousands to the guillotine was guillotined himself. The crowd jeered. Paris exhaled. The reign of terror was over. But the revolution had destroyed so many of its own best minds that France was left asking a question it had no answer to. What comes next? Into the wreckage stepped a young Corsican artillery officer who had risen through the chaos faster than anyone thought possible. Napoleon Bonaparte, 30 years old, already the most celebrated general in Europe. In November 1799, he staged a coup. Soldiers surrounded the legislature. Delegates fled through windows. Within hours, Napoleon was first consul of France, effectively its dictator. 10 years after the revolution had torn down one-man rule, France was under one-man rule again. The difference was, this time, France said yes. Napoleon brought what the revolution had failed to deliver: stability. He codified French law into the Napoleonic Code, which still underpins legal systems across Europe today. He was crowned emperor in Notre Dame Cathedral in 1804, and in a moment that said everything about the man, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. No one was going to crown Napoleon Bonaparte. He would do it himself. The French Revolution lasted 10 years and consumed tens of thousands of lives. It executed a king and a queen. It invented the guillotine as a tool of equality, and then used it on everyone indiscriminately. It produced the most radical political ideas of the modern age, and then betrayed most of them. And it ended with a military dictator. But the ideas it unleashed, liberty, equality, the right of ordinary people to determine their own government, could not be put back in the box. Every democracy that exists today carries a piece of what happened in France between 1789 and 1799. The revolution devoured itself, but it also changed the world. If this video kept you watching, you'll find the rest of our history right here on Echoes of the Past. We cover the stories that shaped the world you live in, every Tuesday and Friday. Subscribe so you never miss one. And leave a comment. What moment from the French Revolution do you think changed history the most? We read every single one. See you in the next video.